All right, guys, welcome in. Continuing my series looking ahead at future college football schedules. I always look at 3 different schedules, kind of map them out, and then talk about how I think each team is going to do in 2023. Today, we're looking at Iowa, Kentucky, and Louisville, beginning with Iowa, who I am relatively high on next year. I mean, their offense can't get worse. They're getting Cade McNamara, who should at least be a serviceable upgrade for them. They also got the tight end Eric All. I would expect a better offense, maybe a slight step back on defense. They're losing a few key linebackers and a good corner, but they always tend to produce a pretty good defense. So right now, I would say Iowa, second or maybe third in the Big Ten West. I do have Wisconsin number 1. And then I'd probably go Iowa at 2. You could also throw maybe Minnesota in there. But just looking at their schedule, Utah State at home, very boring game. But Utah State was just horrible. I don't know. Did Utah State make a bowl game? I think they might have. But they were terrible. They were one of the worst bowl teams. The week 2 game at Iowa State, that's always miserable. That's always 10-7. Maybe they win it. You really got to flip a coin on that rivalry. Week 3, Western Michigan at home. So in terms of non-conference, the absolute worst is 2-1. But I would be optimistic if I was an Iowa fan. Maybe you win a close road game against Iowa State and you start 3-0. It is doable. Week 4 is brutal at Penn State. I don't think that'll be Penn State's whiteout game, but you never know because Penn State's other whiteout chance would be against Michigan, but I think that game is in November, and normally Big Ten doesn't like scheduling November night games, so that might be the whiteout game for Penn State. That would be bad. Maybe it's big noon, but either way, I would not expect Iowa to go into Beaver Stadium and beat that Penn State team next year. That's a tough start to the conference schedule. You get Michigan State at home, it's winnable. Purdue at home is winnable. At Wisconsin, I'm going to say that's very likely a loss. I am high on Wisconsin, although they are new. They're going to be a new system with Luke Fickell. You're just a new team in general, but going to Camp Randall is tough. Minnesota at home, that's a game. If you want to be a top 25 team, if you're Iowa, you got to beat Minnesota at home. They get a really nice off week kind of towards the back end. And then at Northwestern, that's got to be a win. They get Rutgers at home. They get Illinois at home and at Nebraska. So that is a very easy finish to the schedule for Iowa, just mapping this out. You would love to get that week 2, steal that game on the road, start out 3-0, probably a loss at Penn State. You beat MSU at home, you beat Purdue, probably a loss to Wisconsin, and then if you win out somehow, you would finish 10-2. That's very likely your best case scenario looking at this schedule for Iowa. Again, they should be much improved on offense. It's not hard to be improved considering I think they were the second, maybe they were the worst overall offense in FBS. I mean, it was so bad. And the defense might take a little bit of it, or it should take a little bit of a step back, losing very likely Jack Campbell and a few other key defenders. They're also losing a linebacker to the transfer portal, so we will see there. Next, Kentucky. So it's funny doing both Iowa and Kentucky. They both produced one of the most boring bowl games we can remember this past year. But on to Kentucky, and I have to say, Kentucky, their football program, I give them a lot of credit for getting Devin Leary from NC State. It kind of seems like a lateral move if you are Devin Leary. Is Kentucky football really that much better than NC State? I guess he wanted to go to the SEC. Either way, you got to love it if you are Kentucky. They do have a lot of talent. They have gotten several key players in the portal, and they do a really good job of recruiting the state of Ohio and really picking the players, kind of some under-the-radar players that Ohio State misses. So they begin versus Ball State. That's got to be a win. Eastern Kentucky at home. That's got to be a win. Akron at home. My goodness. What a non-conference schedule this is. So that's 3 straight extremely easy. This is the same non-conference schedule that they had last year. So Kentucky, I would be shocked if they were not 3-0. Actually 4-0. They've got Vanderbilt after that. Amazing. So I don't know if I've seen an easier start to a season. Just looking through all these schedules, that's a free 4-0 start. Florida at home, that game is winnable. We don't know what's going on with Florida with Anthony Richardson leaving. You've got a Georgia team on the road, that's a loss. Missouri at home, it's winnable. So I could see Kentucky coming out of their bye week ranked with one loss, and that only loss being at Georgia. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is they lose to either Florida or Missouri at home, along with Georgia. And, I mean, I just can't see them getting upset by any of those first four teams, but maybe Vanderbilt. I'd be shocked. Either way, they get their bye week kind of towards, the middle, maybe a little bit past the middle of the season. That's a good time to have your bye week. They get Tennessee at home. Tennessee is more talented than them, but if you're Kentucky, that's an opportunity. I mean, they're losing Hendon Hooker. You're at home. If you're ranked at this point, it's going to be a nice environment. It might be the 3:30 CBS game. It might be the 7 o'clock ESPN game. You've got a chance. If you start the season well with Devin Leary, there's a chance. At Mississippi State, tough game, but it's winnable, but I would not favorite them. With Will Rogers returning for Mississippi State really helps them. Bama at home, that's brutal. Even though it is home, it's a brutal game. At South Carolina is iffy. We don't really know what South Carolina is going to be next year, although they do return Spencer Rattler. And then at Louisville is a team a lot of people are high on, even losing Malik Cunningham. That is the other So guys, Kentucky is going the Michigan route in terms of their non-conference schedule. Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, and then the rivalry game with Louisville. That is remarkable. So Kentucky, I'm pretty high on Kentucky in terms of them at least getting, I'd say, 7 or 8 wins. If they've got 4 free wins at the start of the year, you beat Florida and Missouri, you're 6-1 coming out of your bye week. That is ideal if you are Kentucky. And then finally, we are looking at Louisville bringing in Jeff Brom. They've invested a lot into their football program. They finished inside of the top 25 in terms of ESPN FPI. The sad thing for them, Malik Cunningham, the star dual threat QB, is leaving, so they will have to replace him. They begin their season in a neutral site game, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, that is the Atlanta Falcons Stadium, versus Georgia Tech. That's a game, if you're Louisville, you got to win. Georgia Tech is not a good football team. You've got to beat them. They get Murray State at home. That's a free win. They get Indiana at Lucas Oil Stadium. So 2 neutral site games in the first 3 weeks. And man, I don't know, when's the last time we've seen a neutral site college game at Lucas Oil? But they face Indiana, and Indiana is not a good team. So I would certainly favor Louisville in that ACC Big Ten matchup. And then a lot of their games are to be announced. You can see they've got the last game of the season at Kentucky. Obviously that's November 25th, so that's not week 4. That's at the end of the season. And then we know the teams they're facing, whether it's home or away. What we don't know right now is the lineup in terms of the schedule, when these games are. But they've got Boston College at home. It's winnable. Notre Dame at home. I probably say that's probably a loss. Virginia at home. That's probably a win. At NC State. That's tough, but it's winnable. You get Duke at home. That's a game you got to win. You get Virginia Tech at home. That's a game you got to win. At Miami and at Pittsburgh. So this is a very manageable schedule. You're dodging Clemson. You're dodging FSU. No wonder so many people are high on this team, in terms of 2023. They've got a very favorable ACC schedule. Also, I am not high on Pittsburgh. I think they could win. They just need to find a legitimate, replacement for Malik Cunningham, and we will see what happens there. But overall, Georgia Tech, you've got to start 1-0. You really got to start 3-0. I mean, those are 3 games, 2 kind of random neutral site games versus really lower tier teams, Georgia Tech and Indiana. Indiana might have a slight advantage in terms of that game being in Indianapolis, but overall, I don't think it'll be anything crazy. The tough thing for Louisville will be that game against Notre Dame, and really everything else is winnable. I mean, this is not a hard... If I'm Louisville, I'm kind of sad at this point that Malik Cunningham isn't returning, because I think he did have a year of eligibility left. This would be like a beautiful schedule to make some serious noise and finish with maybe like one loss or something and make the ACC championship. It just sets up perfectly. I mean, Boston College at home, Virginia at home, Duke at home, Virginia Tech at home, at Miami is winnable, at Pittsburgh is winnable, at NC State without Devin Leary is winnable. Goodness, man. That is a very easy schedule. And then I always do this. I look at one team, that's not in the Power 5, and we are going to be looking at San Diego State out of the Mountain West. They're always a team that has a good defense. And just taking a look, they do play week 0, August 26th, against Idaho State, the FCS Bengals. So certainly expecting a win there. They have a game at home against UCLA. They got that new stadium, which is super bland, by the way. If I'm a San Diego State fan, I'm very happy that, the program got a new stadium, but there's just nothing special about it. It's one of the most, it looks like one of those MLS soccer stadiums in the U.S. If you look at it, there's nothing unique about it. You're investing millions of dollars into a new stadium. Make it at least semi-unique. They didn't do it. I mean, I get congratulations. They got a new stadium, I guess, but they get UCLA at home. And guys, San Diego State needs to take advantage of that game. That's a UCLA team who might be starting a true freshman QB with very limited experience. That's a game you can win and make some noise in terms of, national news and stuff if you beat UCLA. At Oregon State, I'm going to say that's winnable too. Oregon State had a nice year, but they don't recruit to where it's like overwhelming. So really, I think this sets up really nice for San Diego State to get 2 huge wins. Maybe they lose both of them, but still, I think they have a chance. At Colorado State, you would favor, San Diego State to win that game. At Hawaii, we know how bad Hawaii's been. Fresno State at home. Fresno State loses their NFL QB. He's off to the draft. Nevada at home. They were terrible. Utah State at home. That's probably a win. At San Jose State, that's probably a toss-up. At Air Force, I am very high on Air Force this year or next year. And then you get Boise State, who's always good, but you get them at home. So San Diego State, it really hinges on them making some early season noise versus UCLA at home and then at Oregon State. That'll be big for their schedule. But either way, guys, I just wanted to go over some future schedules. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.